Hey everyone, welcome to this lecture. We are going to talk about in this section regarding the Palo Alto Content ID. So let's discuss what do you mean by Content ID inspection, which is the next gen firewall feature of Palo Alto, right? So Palo Alto is known for uh, is known for three important feature with its next generation firewall capabilities. Okay, so the three important components of the feature that you must know are content ID, next is your application ID, also called as app ID. Okay, so for that, app ID, and the third one is user identification. Content ID is basically content identification. ID stands for identification. Okay, and user identification. So these are the three important component that Palo Alto has, and we call that the next gen available features or the next gen firewall features of Palo Alto. Right, out of this, we will discuss everything in detail. So we'll talk about content identification or content ID part now and see what is the meaning of it. Right, so let's say that you have got a traffic which is traveling from the inside zone user to the outside zone. So let's say that this is the inside zone user that you have, the PC. Okay, let's say different color. So this is the inside zone user. It is trying to send some sort of traffic to the world of outside, and also it is receiving on the same session the traffic from outside to inside, right? So it is doing some sort of transaction. Let's say it is a web transaction, which is an HTTPS transaction. Okay, so we have enabled in our previous lecture, we have enabled SSL decryption in your Palo Alto firewall, so which will enable to decrypt any SSL based outbound or inbound packets, right, and look for the payload content. So let's say now the point is, if this user is sending and receiving some sort of traffic, but those traffic has got some sort of threats involved, or you can say some sort of vulnerabilities involved, right? So how does Palo Alto firewall detects that? So you are trying to go against the legacy principle of just identifying the traffic based on IP addresses, basically source IP, destination IP, or port numbers, right, or applications that you are trying to access, right? So you are trying to dig more deeper than those 5 tuples principle. Okay, so you are trying to look for the content that this user is trying to upload or trying to download. So in the payload, whatever the content the user is trying to upload or download, you want to going to examine that and understand if that particular payload content is containing some sort of threats, viruses, malwares, trojans, and accordingly, if it is there, you have to take a decision of either dropping it or resetting it or blocking it, etc., etc., right? So this is the concept of content ID. So content ID inspection by Palo Alto, right? So ensure that your firewall should be licensed to have support this next gen features, and there are multiple content ID components or content ID services that Palo Alto firewall has. Okay, and we'll discuss that details. So let's make some key points out of it, then it will be clear. So let's say that we talk about the content ID features. Okay, so as I've told you, in Palo Alto networks, any security products, could be a firewall, right, could be a SASE product, could be a SD-WAN based product, right? So if it is a next gen product, so there is a feature called as content ID, and it's a security feature which will combine multiple threat prevention technologies and it is used to protect against a wide range of threats in real time. Okay, so the whole idea of content ID is to inspect traffic at the application level. Okay, so I can say to inspect traffic at the application level, and it will enforce the security policy. It will enforce the security policies based on content rather than ports or protocols, right? And make sure one important thing is, you can apply content ID. We normally say content ID profiles. Okay, and there are multiple profiles that you can create, so you can apply those content ID profiles in the security policy of your Palo Alto firewall, in the security policy of PA FW, only for allowed action conditions. So only if the firewall is allowing certain packets to travel from in to out or from out to in, for example, and only for allowed security policy rules, you can go and attach those content ID profiles. Okay, but let us say your security policy is denying some traffic traveling from, let's say, inside to outside. On that, since the traffic is already denied, attaching any content ID will not be applicable. Okay, so this is a very important point. So what are the key components of content ID? You have components of content ID. Okay, the first component that we have is very simple. It's called as antivirus component, or you can say antivirus profile. Okay, so the idea of antivirus, as we know, it will detect and block any known malware, including viruses, worms, and spyware, right? So it will detect and block known malwares, which includes viruses, worms, trojans, spyware, etc. Okay, so you can create an antivirus profile, and you can attach that to your existing allowed security policy, right? And we'll see that in our upcoming videos. Likewise, we can have another component in content ID inspection that is specifically for anti-spyware. So in case of anti-spyware, it will prevent any spyware and command and control traffic from infected endpoints. So if your user is trying to reach to any command and control server from inside zone to outside zone, or might be you are getting a command and control botnet request, right? So from any of the endpoints. So if you're trying to upload or download some files which is reaching a spyware element, so in that case, you will be prevented against those spyware servers, right? So I can say prevents spyware, and I can say C2C, which is basically called as command and control traffic, from any infected endpoints, or you can say infected botnets. Next thing that we have is called as vulnerability protection. So what do you mean by that? It's again the simple thing. It will protect against any sort of exploits or vulnerabilities which will be done by blocking any attempts to exploit for known security weakness. So what is the meaning of vulnerability? Vulnerability is kind of a known weakness, a known security weakness. So your Palo Alto firewall should be capable enough to understand if the user is trying to reach some sort of vulnerable URLs or vulnerable destination, trying to reach some sort of vulnerable geolocation, etc. So which can possess some risk, or trying to reach some vulnerable port and protocols which can possess some risk. So your Palo Alto firewall should be able to protect against those vulnerability elements, right? So I can say it will protect against exploits and known vulnerable destinations. Okay, by attempts to exploit any security weakness. All right, next component, and one of the important component, is called as URL filtering, which is part of your content ID inspection. So as we know that in case of URL filtering, you can restrict access to malicious or any inappropriate websites that is based on some predefined categories, and also you can have create some custom categories, and you can define the URLs that you want the users of your inside zone, for example, to reach or to block, right? So yeah, so you can allow URL filtering based content ID inspection, where you can say restrict access to malicious or inappropriate websites, which is based on predefined categories or and custom categories. Okay, the next thing that we have is data filtering based content ID inspection. So as we all know by this term as data filtering, so it will prevent the data exfiltration by inspecting any traffic for sensitive information, example social security numbers or credit card numbers. So if your user is trying to send some sort of or doing some sort of transaction, and let us say they're sending an email which can contain information about credit card or social security numbers in that email body. So in that case, your Palo Alto firewall, by doing that content inspection, can understand it can possess company's threat by leaking some sort of personal or PII data. So it can protect against those data filtering threats, right, or data filtering exfiltration. So yeah, so you can prevents data filtering exfiltration by inspecting traffic for sensitive information, which could be social security number, credit card numbers, etc. Okay, next you can attach something called as a file blocking content ID inspection. So it will control any file transfers that is based on file type. So you may block any executable, that is .exe file types, or any unauthorized file uploads or downloads, right? So it's very simple to understand. So it can control file transfer based on the file type, for example .exe, .pdf, or any unauthorized file types or extensions. Okay, last but not the least, we can enable DNS security based content ID filtering, which will protect against any sort of malicious DNS activity, such as domain generation algorithm called as DGA or DNS tunnelings, right? So you might be unknowingly creating a DNS tunnel to a ROG DNS server. So yeah, so Palo Alto firewall can protect against any sort of rock DNS activities like DNS tunneling or DNS domain generation algorithms. So you can say protect against malicious DNS activity such as domain generation algorithms, which is called as DGA, and DNS tunneling. Okay, so these are the varieties of components what you have in case of content ID inspection, and you can attach and create those individual profiles for each and every component, and you can attach that to a security policy. One thing to be noted here is that security policy action should be allowed. Okay, so regarding how this content ID feature works, as I've told you, it will go and inspect all the traffic in real time without impacting any sort of performance. So Palo Alto Firewall, so how it works, I can say that it will inspect all traffic in real time without impacting performance, right? It will identify threat which might be embedded in various protocols, right? So supports protocols embedded with threats such as HTTP protocol, HTTPS protocol. For any HTTPS based content ID inspection, ensure that you must enable SSL decryption policy. Okay, as we have done in the previous video. FTP protocol might be SMB protocol, right, etc. Likewise, Palo Alto uses one feature called as Threat Intelligence Cloud. So Palo Alto uses Threat Intelligence Cloud to stay updated on any new threats. So I can say Palo Alto uses Threat Intelligence Cloud to stay updated on new threats, and also it works in conjunction with app ID, that is application ID and user ID, to apply security policy based on might be applications and user identities, right? So I can say it works in conjunction with app ID and user ID. Okay, so I hope this introduction to content ID is beneficial to you. You have understood what does exactly it means. So in the next video we'll talk about the respective content ID inspection policies and profiles that we can create, and we can attach those to your existing security rules. Okay, so I hope it is clear. I thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.